right, so define racism in your own words.
Oh, racism. It's a system that is used to basically uplift one group over another. Obviously, racism is used. It's all about skin color. Okay, so whether you're white, black, Hispanic, Latino, Asian, so it's a system created to, in a way, uplift one group while oppressing another.
Okay. Define racism
Ooh.
in your own words.
Uh, when one group of race thinks they're better, or they can empower another group of race,
Okay.
or another group of people.
All right. Name. Define racism in your own words.
Racism is. I feel like racism's hard to define these days because I feel like you can take racism in any direction. Racism, I guess, to me is how it used to be, like with discrimination, like separating different races of people and different colored people and not letting this group of people enter this building. That's what I consider racism.
Name one way you believe that we as a community could stop racism.
I think one way that we can really try to address racism is by just having honest dialogues with each other. I think that most of us are afraid of having that dialogue, so we avoid it. But I think that the more that we get comfortable with just having that tough dialogue and then agreeing on disagreeing at times, I think that might be probably the start of the process, because it's a long process. It's not an overnight kind of, one time shot or anything like that.
Name one way that you believe we could stop racism.
Kindness.
Name one way you believe we could stop racism.
I guess, as people say when you're growing up, like if you don't pay attention to it, it'll go away on its own. So, I mean, yeah, you can take that to a certain extent, but if people keep bringing it up, like, yes, the past is the past, but at the same time, there's nothing we can really change about the past. We just need to move on and be better people. So if we just stop talking about it, then it'll hopefully just go away.
Have you personally ever been hurt by racism? Through workforce, workplace, growing up, coming here?
Yeah. So I was just using this example with my students on Saturday that a few years back I was working at a place in West Des Moines. And I remember that, but I was living in the east side of Des Moines. So I was done with work late at night. So I started driving, and it was a snowy day. So I decided to just take University all the way from the west side to the east side, because I didn't want to get on the freeway. And as I drove through Clive, I got stopped by a police car. And right away, the questions was like, what are you doing? Where are you going? It's like 12:30 at night. And so when he saw my ID and he noticed that I live in the east side, he said, what are you doing in this part of town? I mean, that was the honest question. Yeah. And I said, well, I work in this area and I'm going home. He goes, you work in this area? I'm like, yes. I said, I work in a building, just down the street. And he didn't believe me. So it wasn't until I showed my ID, to gain access to the building, that he finally realized that. And funny thing is that he didn't even give me a ticket.
Have you ever been hurt by racism?
Yeah.
Can you explain?
I grew up in Texas, so I played football in middle school. I remember I got the ball, and some guy tripped me up, and someone's trying to tackle me, but I just leaned in, and I popped him, and he got a concussion, and he was on the sideline, and then his parents were like, "Get that hard hour off the."
Wow.
Yeah. They were serious in Texas. They didn't play.
All right. Have you ever been hurt by racism?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I wasn't hurt, but
Does it happen to you?
Not. So I used to work at an old job, and come to find out that my manager would pay. So I won't say what it was, like reverse racism to a point, because we found out that he was paying African American people more money than white people, and then when the head people found out about that, then he got fired. But he pretty much said it's because they deserve it.
All right, name 3 feelings or words that come up when you hear the word racism.
For me, sadness, just because I know that a lot of people experience it. I will say disappointment that it's 2019 and we're still dealing with this issue.
Yeah.
You know, and then believe it or not, hope.
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 All right, name 3 feelings that come up when you hear the word racism.
Hatred, mad, hatred, sad, and then kind of like pity for the person that is racist.
Do you ever name 3 feelings that come up when you hear the word racism?
Incompetent, not open, and the South.
Okay. How do you explain racism to a child? So you're obviously a father.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how would you explain it to a child?
Yeah, so that's one of those tough conversations,
Mhm.
you know, where you sit down and in my case, I have biracial children. And so for me, you know, sometimes they get it from the two sides.
Mm-hmm.
They get it from the white side where they're not white enough, and they also get it from the Latino community when they're not Latino enough. So, so I believe it or not, I had this conversation with my daughter when she was about 8, and that's because someone kind of say, well, you know, you have a Latino last name, but you're not one of us. And so I had to explain to her that there are people out there that definitely need to work on their own biases, on their own issues, and then I tried to explain to her, you know, that this is probably something that she will endure many times in her life, and so the best way is to kind of like grow resiliency to it.
Yeah.
And you can grow resiliency in 2 ways. You can just kind of like acknowledge that people need to work on their issues and kind of move on, or she could fight back, right? But I told her, you know, fighting back can be done in the way of education versus actually fighting, because otherwise she'll get.
Okay. How would you explain racism to like your children?
When someone else just doesn't like you because of your skin color. Well, yeah.
How would you explain racism to your children?
Racism is you being a dick to other people because they're different.
And then do you think global racism is getting better or worse in the current state?
Oh, actually, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. And I think that you can see it from all the headlines, you know, not only here in the States, but I mean, you look at places like Germany or Eastern Europe, or even like South America, you know, Brazil. So I think it's getting worse.
Do you think global racism is getting better or worse?
Worse.
Worse. Do you think global racism is getting better or worse?
I would say it's better to the fact of like we don't have like Jim Crow laws anymore. Like you can't just go around and burn people.
And what kind of place will the world be once we all are free of racism?
Well, here's the deal. You know, I would love to I would love to believe that we are gonna get there. Okay, or that we're close to being there, but the reality is that this is continuous work. So it's kind of like a hard question to answer, because again, it's a journey. You know, I don't see the end of the tunnel yet, but I think that if we were to ever achieve it, I think we definitely will be able to coexist.
What kind of place do you think the world will be once we're all free of racism?
Hopefully better. Hopefully it doesn't get worse if we.
Do you think it'll get worse before it gets better, or?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I feel like there has to back in the civil rights, there's a reason people really wanted it to end. Now it's not too bad.
What kind of place will the world be once we're all free of racism?
I feel like we're getting close to it. I mean, yes, it's still there, but I don't know if it'll ever just go away. There's always going to be